All right, my friends, it is time for another deep dive where we will take a look into the discography of A Day to Remember, who is one of my all-time favorite bands. I would put them up there with Blink-182, Hatebreed, 311. I don't know what I said last time my favorite bands were, but they're up there. I've been listening to them consistently for a good solid 15 years now. Never stopped. Pantera, yes, also Pantera. I would put A Day to Remember up there with Pantera and Blink-182. That is how good they are. They're one of these bands that, along with Slipknot, really doesn't have anything bad in their discography, and that's why this is going to be so hard. We're going to go through their discography. I will rank it, in my opinion, from worst to best, and it's going to be tough because A Day to Remember at their worst is still pretty damn good. And also, I wanted to mention something new that I'm doing, which is a YouTube coaching program. If you're an individual creator or you're a company, really anybody that wants to grow on YouTube, this is for you. Basically, this is a way to download everything that I have learned about YouTube over the past 7 years from my brain into yours. There's a pretty common set of challenges that pretty much everybody runs into on YouTube. I've run into pretty much all of them. And with this coaching program, I can help you get past those a lot faster than I did figuring it out on my own. For example, in my opinion, the single most important thing for any channel is figuring out the right niche for your content. Like, what should you focus on and how do you talk about it? For example, for me on this channel, once I found that, I went from getting, a couple hundred views a video to tens of thousands of views per video, literally almost overnight. You can see it right here. And also the right approach to things like titles and thumbnails and how to structure your videos to keep people's attention. All that stuff that took me years to figure out on my own through trial and error. I just want to help you speed run all of that. I am super excited about this, and I'm going to be putting a lot of time and energy into it over the course of the year. And if you want to find out more about it, you can just hit the link in the description of this video. So in order from worst to best, I'll start with their very first release called Halos for Angels, Dirt for the Dead from way back in 2004. I think they were like 17 or something like that when they did this. This is like their very first demo, which I'm saying is the worst thing they ever did. Never officially released outside of, whatever small number of copies they produced back in the day. Mr. Creepy here, watching this MySpace girl sleep. Nothing weird about that. I'm so like actual children, and they did this. This is from 2004, 16, 17 years old, something like that, super young. For some context, 2004 is a long time ago. American Idiot was big right before Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance hit the same. I mean, that's how long ago this was. Like, American Idiot came out in 2004? So a long time ago. A little rough, right? I'm sure everyone in the band would agree with me that this is not their best material. The foundation is there, though. I can hear the potential. It's true. Like, this is not good. Let's just be real. But even them, as high school kids, and let's be real, this is not great. You're like, I've heard a lot worse. So this is definitely the worst thing they've done. But even that, I would say, it has potential. Not the worst thing in the world. When their worst song is still palatable, they had a few weak links in their discography. That's it. Yeah, it's good for what it is. So the next worst thing I would say is their album You're Welcome. This was the, their 7th album or something like that from 2021. Not my favorite thing, but it's also not horrible because, again, A Day to Remember at their worst is still pretty good. This album got really shit on a lot, which I think is unfair. It's their worst stuff, but it's not bad. Like, I'm not mad if this comes on. I feel like they were going a little bit too far in sort of the, Imagine Dragons kind of direction, with the oh-ohs and the stomps and claps and stuff. Yeah, I think this song's good too. I like it. A little bit Imagine Dragons-y, but I still like it. Is this Rich Men North of Richmond? Yes, it is. This is Rich Men North of Richmond. I do think this song has really good lyrics. I like the vibe. This is probably my favorite song on the album. I think it's pretty good. The rest of the album, though, I'd say just kind of not really my favorite. For example, Resentment here. Just a little bit too radio rock for me. It's like Breaking Benjamin meets Imagine Dragons or something. Yeah, kind of a little too octane. It's not for me. Yeah, I think I'm discovering I like this record more than I thought. When it came out, to be honest, I really didn't like it. And I still don't love it. but it's a lot better than I thought it was at the time. I wouldn't necessarily choose to listen to it, but again, A Day to Remember at their worst, still pretty damn good, but second worst album in my opinion. The third worst album, in my personal opinion, is Bad Vibrations from 2016. The thing with this album is that I'm pretty sure that this is the first album that Tom Denny did not work on. So Tom Denny was their original guitarist. You know, he's the guy with all the tattoos and the bald head and all that stuff. He quit the band in 2010, I think, but he still worked with them on writing and production and stuff like that, up to and including Common Courtesy. And I feel like Tom Denny was kind of their secret weapon. Yeah, Tom Denny is to A Day to Remember as Tom DeLonge is to Blink. I think so too, and you know, there are people who are close to the band that tell me I'm wrong and they're like, oh, you know, no, that's not right. I don't agree with that because A Day to Remember with Tom is very different from A Day to Remember without Tom. So they might not think he was important, but I think he was. And I think this album is really proof of that. Not a bad album by any means, but it's just kind of, it's not quite there in my opinion. Got some good parts though, like title track here, Bad Vibrations, definitely cool. Pick your poison, live with remorse. So this is the heavy song. I also think the production on this is kind of weird. 99% sure Andrew Wade recorded it. As I recall, Andy Wallace mixed it. I don't think Andy Wallace is the right guy to mix them. Andy Wallace is very like old school. Like he mixed Rain and Blood, for example. Very old school. He doesn't use, you know, any samples or anything like that, or does not use very many. And I think the mix just sounds like a little too like flat and old school for them. Yeah, Andy Wallace is a legend. He is, but I don't think he's the right person for A Day to Remember because like he doesn't get this kind of music. You know what I mean? So he doesn't really know what it's supposed to sound like. And yeah, the guitars sound very weak on this song, like low gain. Exactly. I mean, this isn't bad. It's not bad. This is when they started to go kind of butt rock. It is, yeah. And I think my observation, I don't know Tom Denny, but my observation is that Tom was the one who was most into like punk and hardcore. And I feel like he brought that to the band, which they really needed. And without that, it does get a little bit too radio rock for me. But not bad by any means. For example, Paranoia, pretty catchy. This song's decent. They always had the pop sensibility. Seems like a natural move for them. Yeah, I agree. I don't have a problem with them going in more of a radio rock direction. I think that, you know, makes perfect sense for them at this stage in their career, but it's missing a little something. And I think it's kind of the same way as like Slipknot without Joey and Paul, just kind of isn't quite there. There's just that little something missing. That's kind of how I feel about this album. Definitely not bad by any means, but just not quite there in my opinion. I would give it like a solid 7 out of 10, I think. Not bad. Again, the fact that I called this their third worst album, it's still good. It's still good because even A Day to Remember at their worst is still excellent. It's just not the one that I would personally choose to listen to, in my opinion. Which brings us to the number 4 album, which is where I would say those two albums are the ones that I would consider the weakest ones that I probably would not ever choose to listen to again. Now we're getting into the albums that I would choose to listen to. So if those are kind of the not so good albums, now we're getting into the good ones. So this is number 4, I would say is, and their name was Treason from 2005. So this is like their first kind of real album. Again, they were probably like 19 or something when they did this. 18, 19 for the most part, very, very young. And this is like their hit song, You Should Have Killed Me When You Had the Chance, which the fact that they had only been a band for like 2 years and they're writing this shit is pretty fucking amazing. So I say goodbye to a town that has ears and eyes. Solid. It has that Crate vibe. Oh, yes, sure does. And like, if you listen, this was like such an interesting sound for 2005. It has that like, you know, melodic death metal inspired like metalcore kind of riffing, like a Kill Switch type riff with, you know, sort of post-hardcore pop punk kind of vocals, which, I mean, nobody was doing that in 2005. Like that was just not done. These are the kids that everyone envied because they had half stacks. That's right. Everyone else would just plug into their crappy crate combo amp, but these guys show up with, you know, their 5150s, and you're like, oh, damn, they're pro. That guy's got a 5150. This part's pretty cool. Really fucking solid. It was the perfect balance between punk, rock, and hardcore. Yeah, exactly. This is when they really like found their sound. You could sort of hear it, you know, in the demo, but this is when it really came together. And I mean, I think this is really, really solid. It's definitely rough around the edges. You know, I'm pretty sure that Andrew Wade did this. I think this is the first thing he did for them. And they were all so young. Like, obviously, this is not their, like, best performances. They have no budget or anything like that. So I'm sure they would agree with me that this is pretty rough around the edges. But the songs are there, and the vibe is there, you know? Another song that I think is really, this is like an underrated song. I don't know if they still play this. I don't think they do. This is an underrated one, A Second Glance. I think this sounds great. This is like one of their better songs, in my opinion. Like, you know, the production definitely holds it back, but if they re-recorded this with like a modern mix, I would say this would sound just as good as any of their modern songs, right? And this is almost 20 years old. I remember catching these guys on some old Southeast shows. Everyone knew they were the ones, even when they were still finding it out themselves. You know, I lived in Ohio when they were sort of coming up during this era, and they were not really on my radar at all. Like, I think I sort of heard their name or something like that, but I feel like they were really making waves in the Southeast. And I really, like, honestly, I didn't really, I wasn't following them at all back then. So like, I don't have any nostalgia attached to this because I wasn't listening to it when it came out. But when I put it on now, I'm like, you know, this is solid. I would listen to this. Definitely rough around the edges, but it's solid. And now we're getting into what I would consider like the really, really good albums, where the next 4 albums, I think there are people who would pick any of these 4 albums as their best album. And I think that these are all valid choices, but I will give you my personal ranking of them. The next one is For Those Who Have Heart, which, you know, I would say that this is the album that I would say like the old school A Day to Remember fans would say is their best. I don't see things that way, but I do think it's very good. I would be happy to, you know, I gave it a listen today and I was like, you know what? This is damn good. This is when I first remember hearing about them. I didn't really pay attention to them, but I remember hearing about them back then. And this song totally holds up. It's a great song. You can see they were having a lot of fun with their videos back then too. Look at that drip. I like his stage moves there. His little head nod. Yeah, it didn't age well having Ron Jeremy in the video, unfortunately. I think that's one of those moments where you're like, guys, should we, do we want to take down the video with Ron Jeremy in it? Maybe that's not the best look, but you know, 15 years ago, so we can't hold them accountable for that. But yeah, not the best look in hindsight. But I feel like this song, and especially with this video, like this is to me where A Day to Remember like really, really comes together. You know, the song is, again, that kind of perfect mix of like metalcore, rock, and pop punk. And, you know, in a very, I'll use the word emotional because I don't know, it gets me in the feels, as they say. Even though I was like, you know, way older than them when this came out. Like, it makes me feel the way that you felt when you first heard this on MySpace. But it has like a silly, fun video to go along with it. And so I think that's really like their like secret sauce of like music that is serious and like means something and makes you feel something, but you know, with their videos and merch and stage show and stuff like that, they're having fun. So they don't take themselves too seriously, but they're also not joking. It's kind of that like real like perfect balance to me. Yeah, reminds me of Blink in that way. Yes. Very good song. Another song that I think stands out from this album is Show 'Em the Ropes. You know, listen to those leads. That's like those Tom Denny lead guitars, sort of like post-hardcore pop punk type leads. I really wish they would bring that back. I think, like, to me, that's one of the defining elements of A Day to Remember at their best. I know it's a little thing, but I really wish that those would come back. Yeah, I agree with this. This is basically their Dude Ranch, not peak, but definitely getting there. I agree with that. It's damn good. Got the cool double bass in there. And then we got the metalcore part. I mean, back then in 2007, you know, to go between those like almost deathcore type growls to like the emo or pop punk type vocals, that was really groundbreaking in 2007. There was really maybe at most like 3 bands or something doing that at the time. Very rare and very cool. And just like, you know, hearing that back then, I was like, whoa, you can do that? Got the pinch harmonic there. Just really seamlessly going from metalcore to pop punk to rock. The thing that to me makes A Day to Remember so good at this, there were other, you know, easy core bands that would do pop punk with breakdowns, but it usually felt like they were sort of kind of clumsily gluing those two things together rather than switching between them in a way that felt fluid and natural, right? Like, oh, here's the pop punk song. Now let's like shove this breakdown into the pop punk song. But when A Day to Remember did it, it just felt natural. And I think this is where they really started to find their sound. The next album, in my opinion, from 2010 is What Separates Me From You. I didn't like this album as much when it came out because they started to go a little bit more of a rock direction than Homesick. I didn't really like it that much at the time, but now that I've listened to it more, I actually think it's great. Like, this is one of their best songs. What a fucking chorus. Like, iconic chorus. God, this song is so good. A Simple Plan song with Chugs, yeah, that's exactly what it is. For me, this has got to be their best song. I don't personally agree with that, but I don't think that's a bad pick. I mean, like, think about what they did with this. They wrote something that could almost be on like Radio Disney or something like that, even though it has like double bass and Chugs in it. And to me, that's what's so special about them, is that they can make music that is both pop and really heavy at the same time. I mean, this is tuned to like Drop C or something like that with Chugs and double bass. And yet you could play this for like someone that doesn't even really listen to like metal or anything, and they would probably think it's a nice, catchy song. Great song. Another song off this album that I really like, one of their best songs, is Second Sucks. Great video too, but I'm going to skip the intro. Shout out to my friend Drew Russ, who directed this video and did an ungodly amount of work on this. Video is amazing, so I feel bad for skipping the intro, but I'm sorry. That's just how it is. One of their best songs. Awesome. Fight. And one of their heaviest songs too. This is so good. Like, I don't think anybody has ever done like this kind of metalcore better than they did with this song. It's perfect. I wish that, you know, if they want to do like radio friendly metalcore now, I wish it would sound like this. I would like a little bit more like this and a little bit less Octane. Personally, I feel like it would still work. You could come out with this now. This could be played on Octane, I think. So now that brings us to the top 2 albums. This is a tough one because the last 2 albums, both 10 out of 10 in my opinion. But I will say that the number 2 album, if we're ranking them from worst to best, the number 2 album, in my opinion, is Common Courtesy, which is really great. There's Tom Denny. So you can see that as recently as this album, which came out 10 years ago, very scary to imagine that. I remember when this came out. I have a little bit of sentimental attachment to this album because at the time, I was working with Andrew Wade on something for my day job. I've done like online education stuff for like the past 10 years or so, and I went down to Orlando to meet with Andrew Wade to work with him on something. And this is when he was still living with Jeremy, and they were recording this album when I went down there in 2013, and they still had like the drums like in the living room of Jeremy's house, and Andrew was mixing it in their bedroom and stuff like that. So I got to be there when they were still working on that album, and that was pretty cool. So like, and I remember this is when they were also like in the middle of their lawsuit with Victory, and they weren't sure when it was going to be able to come out and all that stuff. And so it was like, it was a big deal.
The year 2003. But it was not just any day. It was a day to remember.
What a video too. Another amazing video by Drew Russ. And this was like such a comeback for them because, I mean, they'd been stuck in that bullshit with Victory for like 3 years. And it was sort of like unknown really whether they would even get to be a band or something like that. And so they come out with this song and this album after going through all that shit with Victory, and it's fucking amazing. Like, it was perfect. The perfect song in the perfect circumstances, and it was everything that you wanted it to be. What a great song. One of their absolute best. Them winning was such a triumph for the scene. It's true. I think Victory had to pay them some huge amount of money, like $1 million or $2 or something like that. So they basically ended Victory Records with that lawsuit, not only in terms of like the financial penalties, but also just that it completely ruined their reputation. I mean, I think everybody already knew that like Victory was shady, but this just really was like the nail in the coffin for Victory. And fuck Victory, you know, that just made this whole thing that much better. You know, the fact that it had like all this context around it. They got $4 million from the lawsuit. There we go. Yeah. And this song also, City of Ocala, also one of their best songs. So this is about their hometown, which weirdly I have spent a lot of time in Ocala because I have worked with Andrew Wade a bunch, who recorded this album. And I've worked with Drew Russ, who directed these videos. And like, I have found myself in Ocala many times over the years. I don't know why. And so I have like weird attachment. Like, I have some emotional attachment to Ocala, even though like I'm from the literal opposite side of the country. And it's a great song. Super high energy, upbeat. It's like exactly the vibe you wanted from them. There's nothing in Ocala, as you can see. Just really great album. Again, I have a lot of like, I have a lot of nostalgia for this album just because, you know, I was sort of like around them when it was being made and stuff like that. And it was like, you know, this was a an important time in my life, and I wanted this album to be exactly what it was. And it's just one of those things where like, yes, I was waiting for this, and it came out exactly the way I wanted it to come out. And just, it doesn't get any better than this, except it does get a little bit better than this, which is the #1 A Day to Remember album, which is Homesick from 2009. Came out in January of 2009 and completely destroyed my world. 0 skips on this album from front to back. One of the most iconic intros ever. I remember a friend of mine gave me this. He was working for their distributor at the time. He worked for Universal at the time. And he was like, dude, A Day to Remember is going to blow up with this album. You got to hear it. And I was like, oh, whatever. It's just that random band from Florida. You know, I had heard like For Those Who Had Heart, and I was like kind of, you know, didn't really give a shit. But he sent me the CD and I put it in and I was like, oh my God, I never imagined you could do this. That this is like pop punk tuned to be with like chugs and metalcore riffs, but pop punk choruses. I was just like exploding head. Like, I had no idea this was even possible, but God blessed me. God blessed me with this album when I needed a blessing. And I said, dear Lord, thank you for blessing me. And then we had the birth of A Day to Remember clones for the next half decade. There were a lot of those, but you know, they're one of those bands that you can imitate them all you want, but there is only one of the original. You know, just the level of talent involved with this band, like everybody in the band, you know, plus Andrew, plus Drew, plus Mike Cortada that, you know, did a lot of their artwork and stuff. Like, you just can't fuck with the level of talent associated with the band at this time. It's really just like one of those things of like just a bunch of incredibly talented people who happen to be in the same place at the same moment in time, and you can't duplicate that. Love this chorus. God, God, I still love this. I can listen to this whole album front to back, no skips to this day. Another one of my favorite songs. Literally every song on this album I could talk about in depth, but this is another one of my favorites. I'm Made of Wax, Larry, What Are You Made Of? Just peak right here. We've got the Rockstar Baddies. You remember mesh shorts? Synchronized moshing and mesh shorts? That's right, basketball shorts for days. Awesome video too. Just everything about this album, absolutely perfect. Still takes me back to the day that I heard this album, and I literally probably listened to this album like twice a day for a year straight when it came out. Just absolute masterpiece. To this day, up there with the Enema of the State as far as I'm concerned. It's that good. And that does it for a deep dive into the discography of A Day to Remember. I welcome everyone in the comments telling me how wrong my opinions are, because that's what we do here. But hopefully somebody enjoyed this. Maybe today, the real friends we made were all the albums we listened to along the way or something, however that goes. But there it is, a deep dive into A Day to Remember.